Hello guys, and thanks for clicking on this video. And as the title says, it's tarp maintenance. On my last wild camp, which was my previous video, you would have seen me put my tarp in a tarp tent construction. I did notice a very slight pinprick hole, but when I come to take it down, I noticed that it increased to 2 or 3 times the size, probably the size of my little fingernail. And the reason, not because it was punctured or made any worse by any of those means of being punctured or, wind conditions or anything like that. It quite simply was, I believe, because it was so taut and I had everything rigid that the fibres going from that opened up as it was completely stretched in all directions. So I really need to fix that hole, not only to stop it getting worse, but I want to be able to rely on that tarp when the weather gets poor. And I could be in a situation, I could be a long way from home, and when things start getting wet and possibly cold, they get miserable. So I'm going to do some tarp maintenance, and I thought it might be interesting for you guys to see how I do it. And quite simply, I know there are people who would say the tarp's had its day, I'm going to get a new one. They're quite simply purists that if the tarp is, damaged in any way, it's a new one. And I can understand that thought process if you have unlimited funds, but I'm not of limited funds, so basically I have to make do and mend to continue, doing what I want to do, which is bushcraft and wild camping. So I'm going to repair this and get it back serviceable. So I'll show you how I do it, and we'll discuss it as we go along. So I'm down in the woodshed, and I'm going to make the most of what natural light I have left in the day. And basically I'm just running over the whole tarp. I'm looking at all the loops, the fixing points, the eyelets, and if any of these eyelets were damaged or pulled through, I would probably go to a local upholsterer, get hold of some eyelets online and get them to re-sew them in, and the same with any strapping that was coming off and any repairs that needed doing to the double-ended pieces of the tarp. And that would not be extremely hard for a seamstress or an upholsterer to do, and on top of that it would be dirt cheap. They would probably charge just a few quid. But I've got a hole, I know I've got a hole, and I've got to find it, and I'm not really going to find it that easily just looking at it in a crumpled, scrunched mess. I'm going to put it out on the clothesline and let the natural light filter through it, and I should see that hole pretty clearly. So I've hung my tarp up and I'm just going underneath it, as simple as just crawling through it in there. And what I'm doing, I'm going through it and I'm looking to see if I can find holes. And I'm just looking, pretty diligently. The wind is catching it. I probably look a little bit silly to the neighbours, but I'm actually struggling to find that hole. But you see, there it is, and you can see it there. If I put it with daylight, there it is. That's the hole, and it doesn't look as like a hole, it looks like a cross. Something's definitely punctured that. Right then, we've established where the hole is and we can see what we're actually dealing with. The rest of the tarp is okay, serviceable. And if I had problems with the eyelets, any of the loops and things like that, like I said, I would go to a local upholsterer or seamstress to get those fixed the best they could. And if it was on one of the centre joints, I would use some clear silicone just to rub along it, just to help waterproof it. But I don't have any of those problems. It's quite simply that hole. And I'll quickly show you how I'm setting myself up here. Right, I'm not using the actual work table there, quite simply because there's other sharp bits on it which could further damage my tarp. I've got it down there and it's on top of a couple toolboxes. I'm going to I haven't got it up here, which you would think would be the natural place to work on it, a workstation, but ultimately I would probably end up ripping it or doing something like that there. So I've just got a nice flat piece of board. There's no splinters, nothing that's going to cause any damage to my tarp. And I'm going to put it pretty much under the area I'm going to work. And there's our actual damaged area of the tarp there. If you see it there, I'm going to place this bit of board right underneath it. Right then guys, I'm kind of set up with the tarp. So now we've got to discuss the items I'm going to use to repair that hole, and why and how I'm going to do it. And on top of that, I'm going to be talking about what I'm going to do to something to repair this tarp, which most of you would be, if you're a wild camper, a bushcrafter, it would be absolutely considered a horrendous that I'm going to do this to another piece of kit. But it's in the aim to get this tarp back usable, and all will be revealed. But first off, I've got a couple alcohol wipes. They're essential to get rid of all the crud and all the unforeseen stuff that is actually impregnated into the tarp, so you get a good seal and bond with the glue you're going to use. So I've got one for the top and one for the bottom, and that kind of is giving you an indication of where we're going with the repair on that. I have the product I'm going to use, and it's a contact adhesive, but it's a flexible one, and it does state it will repair fabrics, cloths, leathers, and things that are kind of like movable and not a continuous solid object. So that should do the job, but there are other brands. I've always used this particular brand and it served me well. But yeah, it's a contact adhesive, it dries clear, and it's got a flexible nature to it. And that's what you need, because as we all know, a tarp isn't a rigid object, it's flexible. So it needs to be a flexible adhesive. So yeah, one tube of that. I've got two just old wooden pegs which have come apart, and they're going to be my spatulas. And the reason I'm using these is that I've got a completely clear edge to it, which is going to help me apply the adhesive glue. And I've got on the opposite side, which has got this nice rounded bit, I can then work the actual repair down and make it solid. So I've got two of those. A pair of scissors, that will be revealed why. And this here is a tarp, and it's in its carrying bag, and as you can see, it's in pristine condition. I never deploy into the field or do anything with my tarp inside that bag. It only lives there when it's just chucked away for long-term storage. Other than that, it's out and it's ready to go, stuffed in my burger, and I can pull it out and just get straight to setting up a shelter. So that leads me nicely to the point. If you're using tape to do the repair, it's 100 to 1 you're going to get a tape that's going to be of the same pattern or colour as your tarp. If you're using any other method like glues or commercial patches and any other of the things that you can buy to actually repair tarps, you're probably not going to get the same kind of coloration that you will from the sack or storage bag that your actual tarp comes in. I'm going to sacrifice some parts of this bag to make patches. I know it sounds horrendous, but like I said, this carrying bag literally serves no purpose other than to basically store it safely when it's not being used back in your shed or back at home. So I might as well use this to patch my tarp. So I'm not going to destroy it all, I'm just going to take what I need. So I've done the deed. I've cut a patch out, as you can see there. And yeah, I haven't destroyed the whole sack, and I'll just quickly show you. And basically, I'm just ramming the tarp in here. And I'll get it in just to convince you that it might be worth you doing if you're trying to get your tarp serviceable. And, you know, it definitely, if we can make it look like a half tidy repair, it won't sting so much, you know, using it. And there we go. Basically, it's good enough to be stored, and you've just lost a small piece there. So that basically is still all nice, neat and tidy. You put back on the shelf or thrown in a corner. So I've got my alcohol rub, and I'm going to clean everything up. And that's basically the surface that's going to have the contact glue there. Come underneath, find the hole this side, over here, give this a good clean. And you can just see a little bit of brown dirt and kind of, you know, unpleasantness coming off. And just do the same to the patches. They should be clean, but I'm just going to clean them anyway. It does no harm. Put them back up there at the way. This alcohol wipe is big enough to do the complete job. I didn't need the other one, so keep that for another job. Right, so that's done. Get myself back set up. Right, make sure I'm square, because I'm going to have to apply some pressure to this job now. And that alcohol is actually drying off really, really fast. But I'm going to get a bit of kitchen roll and just give it a quick going over. So I've got my peg, and I've got a little bit of contact glue inside the actual contents container, just so I don't have to squeeze out. It's there readily available for myself. And I'm just getting a little bit, and I'm not going to overkill it. I'm just going to get just enough to put the other patch on. And I'm just working it into the fibres. And because the actual peg is actually got a nice flat edge, if I pull this taut, I can work that adhesive right in to the fibres. And I'm just bringing it out to the outer edges where I believe my first patch will sit. I'm just going to offer up the patch and get a rough idea. That's not too bad actually, just a little bit wider. And I should be good to add the patch. Like I said, the good thing about using this peg is I'm able to really push it into the fibres, and that should increase the bond. There. Right, that's got a complete coverage. This will dry clear, and it should look something similar to what's on the inside of the waterproofing liner and to the seam on the back of the actual tarp. So it shouldn't be that noticeable. Right, I've got a good dollop here, and without making too much mess, I'm going to put it on the internal of my patch. And I'm going to take it all the way from the centre and working all the way around it. I would suggest you wear gloves, because you're going to get a little bit of it on yourself. And yet again, I'm trying to work it into the fibres of the patch. It's a little bit like if you to use an explanation, like you're trying to weld it, you're trying to actually get it completely bonded. So I'm making sure the hole is in a good central position. I've got the flanges of the puncture mark all neatly crossed. Right, and I'm going to put this over, and I'm just bringing it around, and now I'm pushing it down. Now I'm just working that patch there from the center outwards, because what I'm trying to do is eradicate any air bubbles. And it's already beginning to look okay. What I'm now going to do is get a very small bit, and I'm going to go around the outer part just to help bond. So I'm going to go all the way around. I'm not trying to flood the job. I'm just trying to help increase the bond. And this, like I said earlier, it should dry pretty near clear. Yeah. And because it's flexible, it should stand up to the tarp being moved and put into different positions. And I'm just making sure that top of the patch is saturated with this glue. There, I'm quite happy with that. Right, I've turned the tarp over carefully, and as you can see, if I follow the line here on my toolbox, that patch on the other side is free floating in midair in a recess. It's leaving the actual hole which I impregnated with that glue there, which you can see nicely. What I'm going to do is get this smaller patch, and I'm going to impregnate this, and I'm going to put this on this side. It is smaller, and I'll tell you why. Right then, what I'm going to do is just get not quite so much glue this time, but just enough to actually put a bit of a coverage. And I'm not pushing quite as hard, quite simply because I don't want to push the bottom, or top shall I say, down to the point where it meets my toolbox. There, and I'm just pushing it in the hole. I actually want to make this waterproof. There, yet again, only just enough glue to take the patch. Right, with the patch, same thing again. Work the glue in. And obviously, because it's a smaller patch and it's on the inside, it's not so critical that you've got to push it in so hard. This is more of a reinforcement to the repair on the top. So I'm just laying that on now, selecting the best position, and I'm having a little bit of difficulty there. Just pushing it on, working it from the center outwards. The same scenario. What you're trying to do is actually eradicate any build-ups of air and things like that. So I'm just pulling it taut, and that is actually doing the job very nicely actually. And I'm just working any air and making it nice and tight. Just going around the outside just a very small bit now. Just working it around. There. Now I'm using the rounded bit now to actually just do the final workings of it. I'm pulling the tarp taut so I get the best amount of pressure I can on it. And it really is looking like this is going to do the job. There, I'm quite pleased with that. That'll do. I'm going to discard the glue. And I'm just going to use that second wipe, which I was actually thinking I could get away and keep. I'm just going to wipe up and mop up any glue on my hands and fingers, because obviously I don't want to get any glue if I don't need it on the tarp. I will leave it. And what I'm just going to do is just clean up and make a nice semicircle around the repair. And I'll let you guys have a look. So that's the internal patch, and I think it looks quite okay there as it does like that. That wet sheen to it will dry off. It will still have kind of like a rubbery look and texture, but it's definitely offering, you know, a good level of water protection and strength because we've bonded it on both sides. So looking at the repair wise now drying, and it's supported by the chair. The underside I've got in the hollow of the arm of the chair. So as you can see, as it's drying, it's not looking that noticeable. And because we've used the same kind of camel colours and pattern, it's looking very well. It matches in quite well. When you consider you could be just using a olive or very light lime green patch from a bought-in repair, I think we've come out trumps on this one. So I've got to let it dry for 24 hours. Well, that was a successful, you know, half-hour project there, and it should get the tarp back in service. The reason I've got a bigger patch and a smaller one is because I don't want to make that tarp in that particular area of the tarp overly thicker than it needs to be, because all that will do is mean that it will add stress to the repair, because you'll have the actual tarp running out of the repair, and you'll have two sandwiches either side, and that will significantly thicken that part and it'll make it less flexible. At the moment I've got the tarp coming up, one big patch and only a small one on the inside, so that allows it to still retain a bit more flexibility. That's the theory anyway, and I hope that kind of makes sense. But anyway, yeah, you will be the judge of whether this is a success when I'm out wild camping in the rain, and whether I'm moaning or complaining I'm getting wet due to this repair. It should hold up. I've got every confidence in it, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing how I've got my tarp back into service. And perhaps it's something that you could consider doing to one of your tarps that are punctured or ripped before you consider binning it and buying a new one, even if it only gives you that few extra wild camps. Anyway, this is Andy from Hidden Valley Footpaths. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to catch you guys out on the trail.